First of all, I would like to thank altokk for providing me an opportunity to share my knowledge to my fellow to share my knowledge to my colleagues through EvoTvo, which is each one teach one. So currently, I'm going to take you through use cases under each one teach one. So flows. Recently, flows are being enhanced by Salesforce. They are adding on more and more features recently, and mostly process builders are being switched to flows since they are going to expire within a year. Is this for you? Yes, it's definitely for you if you are an admin or an app builder or a developer. So before going to the session topic, I would like to show you the first Salesforce page, how it was looked like previously when the Salesforce was launched in 1999. So this is the Salesforce login page, and the Salesforce site was launched, or the Salesforce CRM got launched. So if you see now, it's totally different. It's a white page with only username, password, and if there is any MFA or SSO, so that's the only page. But here, if you see, that's totally different.
Rupesh, I'm so glad you actually brought this up because I actually uh, came across a few old screenshots and I saved it in my org. I wanted to show it to you, but I obviously forgot. So this is how it looked almost 20 years ago. So I can put it. The original ones. You still see those tabs on the top. You're like everything is on the same page. Pretty much this the home page. If you see how obviously there are a lot of improvements on the web as well, but uh, if you have a screenshot of the so I have a screenshot of the logged in one. So this is not logged in part. This is still asking you to log in. But I will probably remind me somebody. I have a screenshot of Salesforce how it looked about 20 years or 15 years back, and you
So
will
the tabs are already showing up even before you logged in.
yes.
Right now it doesn't.
There's everything on this page. If you see, there's so much text. These days it's simple. So these days it said the pages should have less text and images and make it more intuitive and all that. So, but anyway, this is the login page. I'll show you the org how the org looked. The once you logged in, maybe some other time remind me. But yeah, thanks Rupesh for bringing this screenshot up. Great.
So coming to the next slide. Since flows are simple to design and maintain, Salesforce is continuously enhancing its features, mostly on every release. Yeah, picture abhi baki hai for flows, because I think Salesforce is going to focus only on flows because it's really easy to create automations without going for triggers unless there is a complexity in the process. So flow interview. An interview is just a running instance of a flow. So the key considerations when you run a flow are: don't use back or forward buttons to navigate when you are running a flow. This may result in inconsistent data transfer when you are running the flow. Like if you might be using get records, update, or create elements. So that can be a hassle if the data outcomes will not be proper, or the flow sometimes may fail or get paused. So delete a flow interval. So previously I have told that if there is an issue or something, the flow might get paused or it even fails. So before running another instance or another interview, the paused or failed interview should be deleted. So how we are going to delete that? So I'll give you a demo how to go, navigate to the flow interview deletion page and usage-based entitlements. So here you can see maximum cost and waiting flow interviews are 30,000 for essential and professional editions. The numbers are different for each edition. So the maximum flow interviews with UI per month. So everything has its own limits. So these are some of the limits based on usage entitlements, and these are general flow limits. And especially you need to consider these limits whenever you are creating a flow. Like how many versions can a flow can have? It's 50. irrespective of the addition, and the number of executed elements. Number of executed elements in the sense each element will run at least once in a flow. Or if you are running a loop, then the element count will be number of elements within the loop into number of times the loop has run. So this should not cross 2000. If it crosses 2000, the flow fails, and whatever the update or create or whatever the action you are performing, it doesn't happen. So active flows per flow type is 5, and total flows per flow type is 5 for essential or professional editions. It is 2000 and 4000 for enterprise and the above editions. The most important thing here is scheduled trigger flow interviews per 24 hours. So this is what you need to focus on. It is either 2,50,000 or the number of user licenses in your org multiplied by 200. So whichever is greater, that gets into effect for the particular org. If you have only 5 users, then 2,50,000 will apply. If you have more than like 400 or 300 users, then 200 into 200 or the 300 count will get into effect, which is greater than 2,50,000. These are per transaction flow limits. So these are also one of the limits. And here you can see the total number of SOQL queries issued are only 100. Total number of records that can be retrieved is 50,000. Number of DML statements issued is 150. Number of records processed as a result of DML statements is 10,000. Maximum CPU time on a Salesforce server is 10,000 milliseconds. The total number of duplicate updates allowed in one batch is 12.
What do you mean by a batch in Flow?
It's a general batch. So suppose if you are executing a scheduled trigger flow, they run in batches, right?
Yeah.
So we have screen flows, or before going to screen flows, if you want a non-system admin user to run a flow, then you need to enable flow user checkbox on the user page of that particular user. It's not profile specific, it is user specific. In order, if there are like 3 profiles and there are 5 users, one is system admin, 2 are manager, and 2 are salespeople. If you want the sales manager to run a flow, then you need to enable this flow user checkbox on that particular user. If it is manager 1 or manager 2, whoever you want to give permissions to run the flow, then you need to check that checkbox on the user page for that particular. I'll show you this in the demo. So generally, while using a loop element, we must use a record collection variable or a record collection element to run the loop. Or you need to pass a collection to run the loop. For each item to run a loop, you need to pass a collection. I mean, we can use the loop without using the loop element. How? Let me show you how. So we can use a decision element, just connect it in a cyclic way so that it looks like a loop and it also works as a loop for a particular conditions or for the given criteria in the decision element. Screen flows. So previously I spoke about enabling a user to run a flow. Screen flows come into play because generally screen flows can be used to perform a quick action. Whenever a quick action button is clicked, then if you want to run a flow, then there you need to enable the checkbox for the users, whoever clicking the quick action button. And some of the tips when you are creating a scheduled trigger flow: never use or get record element in a scheduled trigger flow before the loop and pass each record to the loop. This may cross the iteration limit, which is 2000 elements per flow, and further leading to failure of the flow. Then whatever the operations you are going to perform, like update, create, delete, they are not going to be performed. The general limit for the executed elements at runtime is 2000, which I have already previously mentioned. So this is how it fails, and this is the error which we land into if the flow fails due to the exhaustion of the limit. Yes, Rajlakshmi.
Are you saying that we should not pass each record to the loop, or you are saying that you have to pass all the records at a time, or what is
We
that?
should not use get elements in a scheduled trigger flow.
Then when we want to do some perform an action on the
I'll explain you in detail in a demo.
okay.
Maybe you can better understand. So formula to calculate the executed amounts, executed elements at runtime is number of elements outside the loop plus number of records you are going to pass in the loop into number of elements including the loop plus one. I'll explain this how this formula works in the demo as well. So here we have created a flow to update contract status to activated if the start date is less than or equal to today and the end date is greater than today. This is one of the use case which I have picked from a recent project. So let's go to demo. So this is my trail arc where I have created some flows. So let me take you to. So in order to check for the paused and failed flow interviews, click on the paused and failed flow interviews. Here you can have a list of all the paused flow interviews. And from here you can have a list of all the failed flow interviews. So in order to allow a user to run a flow, click on users. Select the user for whom you want to enable the run flow. Click on edit. So if you see here, this checkbox is unchecked and the profile of this user is standard user. So if you check this checkbox, then you can allow this user to run the flows. Click on save.
Rupesh, one question. When you say run the flow, by clicking that checkpoint, is that giving that user the access to create a flow, or is it
No.
only
To run the flows. I mean,
only when he logs in the flow will run?
no, not
On the record.
not in that particular case. Actually, we use screen flows. Where we can allow users to run flows depending on certain actions. Right?
Okay.
1 second. Let me explain. So here I have created a quick action button, which is linked to a flow. Whenever I click this button, a flow will be running behind.
Okay. Okay.
So if I click this, so I'll enter some data here and I'll create a flow. I'll create a contract record using a flow.
So in case I log in and try to click on that quick button, this will not work in my case. If that
Unless you
flowchart
have that checkbox is
checkbox clicked.
unchecked.
Okay, got it.
Even this button will not be visible to you. You have no permission. If that
It will
checkbox
be
is
grayed out. Okay. Okay.
Okay, one more. So for this, only screen flows has been applicable, or see some flows has to be run at the background. So if that user doesn't have,
it will be applied for all the flows, not only screen flows. It's not distinct only to screen flows. It will be applicable for all the flows which are created. If you want the user to, or if you want to allow the user to run those flows, unless if they are like, for suppose if you are creating a record, then in that instance, it is not necessary that it is not required for the checkbox to be checked. Like if you have created a flow to create or update a record on a, for suppose if you are creating a record like like a record on contacts, And if you want to update the number of contacts related to the account, number of contacts, let me explain with an example. So I have created an account here. So here there is a number field created for the number of related contacts. So if I create a contact here, let me activate that.
There is a mandatory field. How do it get created?
Which one?
Salutation, there was a mandatory field.
No, it's not mandatory. Its name is a mandatory.
Only last name.
Okay.
Last name, not salutation. So if I check here, the number of related contacts before it was blank, and now it has been updated to 5. So these kind of flows, the user should is not necessarily required to allow permissions like by checking the checkbox on the user page. But for screen flows, yes, it is mandatory. If you want to allow the user to perform some actions by entering data using a screen flow, then it should be it is mandatory that that user should have this checkbox checked on his user page. Any questions?
Yeah, for the screen flows, it is mandatory. For the auto launch or anything which
Record trigger flow, it is not mandatory.
not mandatory.
It is not mandatory. For screen flows, yes, it is mandatory because there is an user intervention. Like he need to give some data, then he need to click that. I mean, he need to trigger that flow, right?
Yes.
So it is not triggering by itself. So user intervention is needed. So that checkbox should need to be checked off. So here I have created a flow, which is a scheduled triggered flow. Don't get scared. This is a simple flow and it has too many elements in this. So first I'm specifying the conditions in the start element. The best practice is to set the start date or the start time to always be future before activating the flow. So I haven't specified any object here. I left this blank, and I'm using a get records element where I'm getting all the records where the status is equals to draft. Now I'm checking.
Is there any specific reason why you didn't choose the contract object in the start element?
Yes, not a specific reason. If I use get records and if I choose the object, their Salesforce gives a warning. Like I choose a contract.
Okay, you have to specify conditions here.
Yes. So it's like you are checking twice. So here I'm using an decision element where I'm checking if the get records element has found any records or not. Get records element, which if it is null or not, I'm checking if it is null or not. If it is not null, I'm passing it to a loop element. Here, if you see collection variable, in loop element, you can only use collection variables. It can be a get records element, or it can be a resource of collection type. So from here, I'm passing each record to the decision where I'm checking the start date of the contract is less than or equals to current date, and the end date is greater than current date. Then I'm using a assignment operator or assignment element. Where I have created a variable of name contracts record signal. Here I'm storing the ID and the status of that particular contract by assigning it to the variable which I have created.
So without using loops, you're trying to use a decision and trying to
No, this is different. I'll get into that part. Here I'm using a loop element here.
right?
I'll get to that part later on. So here I'm using another assignment element where I'm using a collection variable and adding the records which are stored, record data which is stored under this single record variable. This is the flow. So now after the loop completes the process or completes the cycle, then there should be an update that has to be done, right? So then you will be using the update records, update contracts. So here you can see record or record collection. So here I'll be using the record collection variable which I have used previously. In the assignment element here. If I debug this flow, always run in rollback mode whenever you debug a flow in order to avoid updates or creation actions taking place after the flow has been completed. And this flow fails. I'll explain you why this flow fails. So here you can see a stop warning, stop sign here. This means the flow has failed. So if you see, I'm scrolling to the bottom of the debug details. You see all the how many times, or you can count how many times the elements are run. So here you can see the number of iterations exceeded. The error says the number of iterations exceeded. So this is the reason why I'm suggesting to avoid get records and passing too many records into this flow, into the loop element or in a flow. This might cause errors due to the due to number of iterations whenever there is a number of iterations exceeded. So how to solve this problem? I mean, how we can better solution this? You can do this same actions using a different flow or with a different approach or with a different solution. It's very simple here. If you see, I'm specifying the start and date and time, the frequency here. And I'm choosing an object and filter conditions. I have already set as previously status equals to draft. Done. And the same decision I'm using here. If the start and end date are greater or less than different dates. I debug here, run back, run in browser. So here it run only once. Previously it was running for all records, and here it ran for once. So any idea? Let me ask you this question. Will this flow works for all the records that meet the criteria?
Yes, because this is not a screen flow, right?
This is not a screen flow, this is not a record record. But I'm not
If you're
getting
not
all the
updating,
records, right?
this won't work, right, Rupesh?
This will work.
Can you open this once?
This was the where we are misled. Some of the tutorials which we find on YouTube, they are always suggest to use a get records element for a scheduled trigger flow. The best practice is never use a get records element to get the records which meets the criteria. Whenever you want to do some updates or insert using a scheduled trigger flow. If you want, I can
This
show
is
you.
scheduled trigger, is it?
Yes.
Okay, then it works.
So let me activate this flow. Activating this flow. I have already queried all the contracts which are set to draft. There are 906 records with the draft status, and the status should be changed to activated when the flow runs at the scheduled time. Let me explain how the loop counts. Elements are counted. I'm picking up a contact here, running the flow. So if you see, if you count all these elements, this is the number of elements executed at one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So for when you are passing the count of 5 records to the loop element, the loop elements consumed is 13. So to calculate this formula, it will be like 1, the number of records, 5 into the elements, into number of elements within the loop, including the loop. 1 and 2, that is 5 into 2, 10. This is 11. This is 12 and plus 1. So plus 1 because the loop element always executed after the loop is completed. Like if you see the loop started for the first iteration, and after the last iteration, it enters the loop again and ends the loop. That is when the additional loop element, additional element is executed. Let's check here the schedule flow.
It shows only 219 records.
So previously it was like 906, and now it has been reduced to 200, and the other records were set to activated since they met the criteria. Now coming to screen flows. So I'm creating a contract from a contact using the screen flow. So there won't be any start criteria for the screen flow. You can always use screens if there is an input data, or if you want to display a message, you can use screens, and that's why it's called screen flow. And the other option, the other operations are common as you do in the record trigger flows. So here, in order to create, you can just drag and drop whatever the data type input is. If it is an address field, you drop it here, give it an API name, enter the resources or the values into this address fields. And by the way, address field was not previously available, and it was now available recently. This was an added feature. Previously, address data type is not available. If you can see, if you are creating a fields in Salesforce Object Manager, you can see the address field as a new addition to the list of data types. And you can create various input values here with different data types. Like you can use a checkbox, you can use a currency field, date and time, dependent pick list, image, even you can display images. So I'm getting a triggered record. So here I'm using record ID. This is a variable where the record ID of the record where the screen flow is getting triggered. I mean, if I go here, from this contact, I'm creating a contract. So the flow is being triggered from the contact record. So in order to get this record ID, we'll be using a variable record ID. Automatically, the record ID will get saved into this variable. You are only need to create this variable from manager by clicking on new resource, and you create a variable. Here I'm checking the contract term. I'm creating a record, contract record, and I'm checking the contract term. So before going this, let me explain the use case. So here the use case is like the user should be able to create a contract from a contact record, and to this contract there is a child object where the child records should be created if the contract term is more than 12 months. So here I'm checking if it is equal to 12 or not with the decision element.
Rupesh, but it says greater than 12. Any reason why you're taking equal to 12?
I'm taking equal to here because I want to display a screen with a display a message with a screen saying contract is created successfully. I can do vice versa as well. If it is greater than 12, I can use a default outcome for the contract which is equals to 12. So if this fails, then the default outcome, the default outcome which is greater than 12 and less than 12. Mostly the use case is that, the user scenario is they always create in multiples of 12. So that is considered, and I use the default outcome. If a user creates a contract with 6 months, then this flow will not work. So before creating this flow, we made sure that the user always enters the term in multiples of 12. So here I'm using a decision element instead of a loop element to run the loop. So Prashant, you asked previously about the decision element in the last flow. So here I'm not using any loop element here. This is how I'm using a decision element to run the loop. Here you need to pass check for certain criteria. If that meets, one branch will go to the loop and the other branch will be coming out of the loop, out of the decision element, which acts as a loop. So here I'm checking if counter is less than subscription. I have used two different variables where I'm setting a counter variable which is 0, and subscription renewal counter is a formula field which I'm calculating it from the term. Counter is less than the subscription renewal counter, then the loop runs. Or once it is equals to the subscription renewal, then the loop stops and subscription records will get created and the screen element will be displayed.
Rupesh, can I add one point here?
Yes.
It's a profile based also, means based on the profile also we can stop the user to not run the flow. There is an option for the profile, run flows. If you uncheck that box, that checkbox, then the user can't run. Even the system administrator, if you uncheck for the system administrator, he can't run the flow. We faced this in one of the project. I just want to add it here.
Thanks, Rajat.
Rupesh, start Kahoot.
Starting it.
Anybody? Yeah, let's start.
Naresh is very excited
What?
with the start Kahoot.
Which is the first project in which Rupesh is involved at altokk?
Whenever Naresh is in Hyderabad, he will be excited for this Kahoot. I observed
7
that.
people know.
Yay, I kept it right.
Not fair for the new joiners.
Hmm.
I also don't know, but only once I heard.
Nothing's fair.
No, but about that, Akansha, the whole idea is not old, new, anything, but knowing the person. The more you know, it could be absolutely new thing which nobody is aware of. So, a couple of people always have the advantage who know them better.
The next question. True or false? Salesforce allows the system admin to delete a flow irrespective to past interviews.
Yay.
Next.
Double points, yeah?
Which of the following can be used as an alternative for loop element?
Hello? I'm also done.
5.
People confused with that collection sort, the name.
Naveen. Multi-select and double pointer. Which of the following are true? Limit for the executed elements at runtime is 2000. Limit for
Yeah.
executed records at runtime is 2000. Maximum number of flows versions is 100. User without a system admin profile cannot run a flow by default.
This is like an English exam.
Rupesh, what is the difference between that red and blue one?
Blue.
This is
Yeah.
number of records. These are number of elements. Previously, I told that
Elements and records.
the number of records, I think it is 10,000.
No, this is a good certification prep because people are saying English. When you go for the Salesforce exam, sometimes it actually comes down to your English. Sometimes they're ambiguous, and you can't raise your hand and say, okay, this question is wrong, like how you should do in our college. So you'll have to take the best guess, make the best assumption, and go forward. So, yeah. Gone. Chalo, next question.
Sushma to the top.
Sushma, Nakansha, and Chandra. Wow. I got 6th place. Still we have 6 questions. Come on.
Next, true or false?
False.
Be careful while answering this question.
Yeah, why we need to be careful? Like act like my manager, I put it false, then fine. No, you should do like this. Why? 9 people can't. Let's see, I passed. 965 marks, still 7th place. That all previous answers. Five each. Interesting. 5 true, 5 false.
So actually, it is false because R is not capital, small.
What?
R is small.
Hello? Okay, next question, please. I passed this question. If you have given 4 options, like Sushma said, and Raji said. This is
Akansha.
Akansha.
Akanksha on the top.
On fire.
Admin preparation is showing up here.
Next
Rupesh,
question.
one question on me to score.
Multi-select, come on. I'll say all the things.
I will come to the top.
Which of the following are false?
Yes.
Come on, what is this false, man?
We can get a
We can get a single record or multiple records using the
I don't know.
element.
I put red, yellow, blue. Delete records can be used to delete multiple records. Park is right. You can give us get records, update records inside group. Why people are thinking like this? It's not a rocket science. It's detecting your skills in answering a question in 20 seconds. I put it right.
I can try.
You said everything and you submitted. And people give this. No,
You got 2 right and 1 wrong.
I don't care. If you don't get, don't play.
2 right, 1 wrong. It mood better.
More better.
Same problem. 2 right, 1 wrong.
I got 2 right. That's
Only one. Only one.
Only one.
Wait.
Asak.
हम आगे ऊपर.
Wait, the question is wrong, is it? Yeah. I have a question. Was correct, is it? I have a question for the yellow one. Gone. Your chance is gone. You are not playing, right? Let's go to the next one.
Wrong, Naresh. Very wrong.
Dude, that was the problem. We faced that issue, that one, 200 issue.
Very wrong.
SQL issue.
Very wrong.
Good morning. Chalo, next one. Rupesh.
Answer only one which we know.
According to the Salesforce Flow and automation rules, which is implemented last.
Good question.
Who said good question?
I said.
Thanks, Rosh.
Only the order of execution. Huh?
Yes, it's actually the generic Salesforce order of execution, which everyone should be aware of. I read the question right, but I thought first.
This needs to be screenshot.
Which is implemented, not the last one.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
What is implemented first, right? Yes. Yeah, but he's asking for the last, not the first. I did the same mistake. I know order of execution very well, but I did the first. I'm in 10th place. Let's go. Let's go.
Akansha, Sushma.
Last.
They can.
Akansha, Rajesh, it's a war between all the ladies.
The ladies on the top.
Rupesh, how
on
many
the podium.
questions?
11.
One multiple choice is versus some bike.
3,000 and 6,000. There's a double point. Yeah, go ahead. The ladies got it right.
No grammar question, Rupesh, please.
Multi-select each of the following.
Each of the following objects cannot be updated using price rule in CPQ.
CPQ.
Oh, multiple select.
Answer, please.
General knowledge, general Salesforce knowledge.
I don't have Salesforce knowledge.
Partially right.
Hey, account also no re. What is this?
Cannot be updated. He's saying account can be updated. Rupesh, is it?
Cannot be updated. Account and
No
opportunity.
pricing.
Where is the price coming picture?
No, that's what. So you're saying which of them cannot be updated? You're saying opportunity cannot be, code cannot be, but account can be updated. Is that what you're saying?
He is
That's what-
confused.
Now Rupesh is confused.
No,
Rupesh is-
Rupesh, you got my point?
Yeah, Roshan.
What
If you
is the
are-
answer? At least tell the answer. What is the answer?
The account should also be like not cannot be updated, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I put only one option. I kept it as account to be safe because all others.
I did the same thing.
Same thing. I put
Account
account.
cannot be updated.
Because you should answer this.
I was
If you
playing
put
safe with account and fast. At least
Because all others use price,
Adyaksha.
so I left all other three. I kept
Yeah.
account. Rupesh, you should answer
look,
this.
one question changed everything.
That too multiple choice.
No
double.
one has answered it correct, right?
At 2 double points.
It's
No,
not
no,
double
not
point.
double point.
Not
Not
double
double
point.
point.
I kept a half right opportunity.
Off right.
See, I would have come from 10th to 9th. Click on next. No, wait. Let's see the leaderboard. Akash,
Again, the three ladies.
There is actually no.
No, Chandra is coming.
The three ladies.
Rupesh, I would have come to the top with this question.
Very good. You were in 3,000 points, she is in 6,000 points.
At least double points, kada.
No, it was not double points.
It's not double point.
Yeah, this was.
Not
Multiple choice, not.
Multi-select, no double
Would have
point.
come
but
to
all others didn't answer, right? At least Naveen, me, and Chandra would have come to the top.
Yeah, you would have got gone
I would have
higher.
come at least till third, second
You
or
would
third.
have crossed
position.
Sushma. What's it?
I would have picked Sushma out of that list.
Chalo.
Next.
Which are the following?
So the following launched Salesforce will help businesses and communities get together safely. Yeah.
Please answer.
Safety cloud.
Abba.
Related. It is related safety.
Marvel
What is
updated.
right with? I kept it right. No, safety. Wow.
Sushma kicked you out, huh?
More people got it right. Let's see.
No, I'm still on the podium.
7.
I am also on the podium.
That multiple choice.
Oh my god.
Prashant, come
Hey,
on.
1 minute. I'll take a screenshot.
Two more questions.
No, two more questions are there. Sushma is getting it wrong continuously.
Rupesh, any double points?
Chandra and Prashant have a
No,
chance to cross Sushma. But
I would have kicked her out with last
Pusher,
question.
I say.
No, I also have chosen that account option there. Only the
Wait.
Okay. Next question.
Next. Hit it.
True or
Come on,
false?
bro.
True or false?
Ah.
True. True eklon చూసుకోండి. Question ఏది? Ishna, you think answer?
Prashant, do you remember?
What?
What? Hey, Rupesh gave the wrong answer.
No, it is not set to GMT. It is not set to GMT.
It
is not to us,
set
it
to
is up to
GMT.
us.
It is set to
It is up to
local
us.
or local time zone.
Local time zone, yeah, not GMT.
Yeah,
But everyone,
Yeah.
you said true. I put.
I kept it wrong. This
Naresh.
is the first question.
Kick
for
him, I say. Naresh, what is this?
But this means the leaderboard remains the same. The last question actually becomes decided.
Double point, huh? Rupesh, last.
Not double point.
Shaq.
I came down.
I hope it's not true or false at least. Last.
I don't
Rajiv.
Yeah, Rajesh,
It's
come
not
on.
that points, Prashant.
Eighth wonder, right?
multi-select.
Select. Arey bhaiya.
Left of reports.
What is this question?
Simple reports.
Very easy.
Mine is wrong one.
Thank you so much. It's a
Yeah.
great check out. 7,000, Raji.
Oh,
Hey, oh, I will,
11,000.
oh my God! Is that me?
Akash.
Oh my
Should be,
God.
Should be.
yeah, it's you.
Actually, prepare it.
Hey, come on.
Yay.
No, you should- this-
Screenshot.
All the ladies.
This screenshot needs to be posted on LinkedIn by, I don't know, 1 of 2, 3. One of the ladies should post. Maybe, I don't know. Raji, you lost, right? You post. Right. But this is the first time I think podium is occupied by all ladies. 18,
Yes. Congrats to all three. Well
Congratulations.
done.
So we had some wrap-ups, and yesterday there was feedback which came in. I'm sure Prashant, Rupesh, you know, but for the rest of the team, please congratulate Prashant and Rupesh for eventually finishing successfully, wrapping up, which was kind of a challenging project, and it went on for quite some time, like almost 6 months, and there were a lot of hiccups. So please take a moment to appreciate and acknowledge what Prashant and Rupesh did together.
Well done, guys.
I think there are more points which came up.
Congratulations.
If Rupesh or Prashant you want to bring up, because I was not part of it, but I got to know that in a different channel that it was celebrated, and eventually we look at the success. More importantly, not because what's the name? More because of how it went up and down. Like people who were coming into the project, Imran was the one who started. He left off without giving any proper KT, and then client always came back. Even at the very late stage, I also got involved for an Experience Cloud assignment as part of that project, and I realized even after 6 months there was no talk about it. So it was not the most easiest client because there are two stakeholders who were like not on the same page all the time. Also, okay, I should have probably stopped recording, but I hope this should go out in editing when we do this. Client not giving enough time to validate what we were doing, so which meant it was always open without knowing whether what we've done is right or wrong. So there were a few challenges there, timelines, client challenges, but so that is the reason why we said good job more than. I don't know what Chris had to say, obviously, at this moment, honestly. I'll probably get to know about that later. But yeah, so thanks, Rupesh, Prashant, and
Rupesh and Raji, thanks for helping out on this project. I think without you guys, I don't think we would have rolled this out. And yeah, partly Roshan as well on community. So thanks, guys.
I had to. I think I would not take the entire credit, but yes, I was also involved. And
That's a
that's
team
how we
effort.
got to know the challenges on the ground. Otherwise, it was more of me listening. But because I got involved, I also got to know the ground level issues, and it was tough in actually getting the closure there. So yeah, it was never ending, and it was always on the move. So we could never say it is safe or it is done. We always said done, and there was more coming back like that. So yeah. So yes, that was good. Keep doing that, and there are a lot of learnings. So I hope we are going to use those learnings in better closing out things in future. Is what I always say.